everyone, Ashley here, and welcome to another video on the Penguin Palace Stamps YouTube channel. Today I'm showing how to make these bold and bright rainbow cards and glittery rainbow cards using the Rain of Hearts stencil from Penguin Palace Stamps. This is a stencil that I come back to over and over and over again because it's so versatile. I find I can use it on so many different cards, and this is just one example. If you want to see more, check out the Penguin Palace Stamps YouTube channel, check out all their other videos, check out my Instagram, which is linked down below. You'll see this stencil used in so many different ways. So I had a lot of fun doing this card and using the stencil in yet another different way. So as you can see, I took a piece of white paper and I just taped it onto the back of the stencil using a couple pieces of purple tape. And I find this is a really great way to adhere stencils when you're inking because at that point the tape is on the back of the stencil. So it doesn't get in the way of your inking at all. It doesn't even interfere with the pattern, but it still holds the paper onto the stencil, which is really good. So I knew that I wanted to do a rainbow pattern, so I just took out 6 different colors of Distress Oxide ink in a variety of rainbow hues, and I'm using my foam blending tools to really blend it onto the paper. I'm just speeding the video up here so we can get through this blending a little bit more quickly. But essentially I just took each color and blended it on in a diagonal line. And one thing to note is that I made sure to blend a little bit farther along the card than I actually wanted that color to go because I wanted to leave a bit of a buffer zone to have the next color blend over it. So as you can see here, I'm kind of blending the blue back onto where I had already blended the green and also blending it further out so that I have space to blend the purple over top as well. So once that's done, I went in with a layer of clear glitter gel. This is from Gina K Designs. It's a Glitz Glitter Gel, I think is what it's actually called. And I'm just using a palette knife to grab it out of the tub and spread it out over the card. So a couple things that you should just keep in mind if you're doing this technique at home. The first thing is that the ink goes on first. So I've actually never tried it the opposite way. I don't know if it's possible. You'd have to wait for it to dry first, but I find if you ink first and then put the glitter gel over top, the glitter gel dries, and since it dries clear, the ink underneath shines through anyway. So it works perfectly this way. So ink first, glitter gel second. You don't even take the stencil off in between because you don't need to. This way the glitter gel goes exactly where those hearts had been stenciled. The second tip that I would love to share with you guys if you want to try this technique at home is that I found while I was doing this that the Distress Oxide ink is so potent in its pigmentation that the pigment from the ink was actually kind of seeping into the glitter gel as I would spread it out over the card. So for example, some of the green pigment ink from the green Distress Oxide would kind of seep into the glitter gel, and then if I spread it onto the yellow, then you get kind of that green pigment in the yellow section. So what I would advise, if you're doing this at home, is to kind of blend that glitter gel on in segments. So try to blend sort of the yellow, then clean off your palette knife, then blend the green, then clean off your palette knife, and do it like that. And that will minimize sort of spreading of colors from one section to another. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and done a number of steps off camera here. I cut out some layers of circles. The first one is a large scallop circle with some vellum. Then I cut a small foam circle, which I'm applying some double-sided tape onto here to go in between the layers, and then the top layer is just a piece of white paper with a medium-sized stitch circle. I also cut a sentiment out of black cardstock because I really wanted it to stand out against that bright rainbow background, and I just cut the words "Thank you." I believe this is a die from Hero Arts. I also cut some small hearts out of black cardstock as well to add as embellishments. So I'm putting everything together now. As you saw, I stuck some double-sided tape onto the back of the foam and adhered the foam onto the vellum and then the paper onto the foam to create that paper on vellum look. I'm then adding some liquid glue to the back of these die cuts so that I can stick them straight onto that white paper. You can also see off to the left there, I let those rainbow patterns dry off camera for quite some time. I would say that the glitter gel takes, for me, about at least an hour to properly dry so that I'm comfortable sort of gluing things to it and managing working with it and things like that. So you do want to give it the time to dry, but when it does, as you can see, that color shines right through. It dries really clear, which is really, really pretty. And you'll see at the end of the video, I'll turn it in the light so you can really see how much it sparkles. I actually made 3 identical cards this way. So you see 2 of them in the footage here. There's another one off camera. A couple of them I actually did the stenciling straight onto the card base, and one of them I actually stenciled onto a piece of paper separately and then glued that piece of paper down onto the card base. If I could give you some advice if you're doing this at home, I would definitely recommend the second way. So I would recommend stenciling onto a separate piece of paper and then gluing that piece of paper onto a card base. Just because I found that when I stenciled directly onto the card base, because of sort of the weight of that glitter gel, I guess, it did cause some warping of the card base as it dried. So the final card is a little bit warped, which I really don't like it when that happens, so it bothered me. If that doesn't bother you, then of course don't worry about it. I think everybody has different things that bother them. That's just one thing that bothers me. But yeah, I kind of played around with different orientations of blending as well. You can see that card on the right there. I blended the color sort of more horizontally rather than diagonally, which I thought was also really pretty. So I'm just lining up my card against that grid line in the background so that I can make sure I get this thank you and circle centered nicely on the card. I chose to kind of put it on the top half, so I elevated it a little bit from the middle and kept it centered vertically. So as a final step, I can go ahead and add those little die cut hearts as an embellishment. I just sort of scattered them around the sentiment, adding one below, one off to the side, and one off to the top right there. And for these guys, I just used my craft tweezers to pick them up because they're so tiny. So they're really hard to pick up with your fingers, and especially when you're trying to place them, I find that. When you're trying to place such tiny things with your fingers, you often sort of like allow your fingers to just get in the way, and you can't even really see where you're placing that tiny little embellishment anymore. So I find that craft tweezers are so helpful for stuff like that. So I just sort of line it up with my craft tweezers, add the glue to the back, and then stick it right down. The cool thing about this little die set that comes with these hearts, I believe this is one from Simon Says Stamp, it comes with the outlines as well as the filled in heart parts. So I like often using this because I will use both the outlines and the heart sort of interchangeably, and it kind of adds an extra level of little detail to the card, which is really nice. So for this tiny little outline, I'm again sticking it down with some liquid glue. I just put a couple dabs on the back of it there. I find with stuff like this that's really tiny, just adding dots of liquid glue is all you need, and it sticks down perfectly. So that is the final card. Like I mentioned, I did this 3 times. I did the other 2 off camera, so you're not seeing repetitive steps. But this is how they turned out. I think that they're really bright and glittery and gorgeous, and I really love the Rain of Art stencil. As I mentioned, check out my other videos or my other posts to see more uses of this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Bye!